Now that you've read about 5 different kinds of sampling techniques, we want to give you a chance to see if you can recognize which kind is which. The instructions on this slide say identify which of these types of sampling is used, and then they list the 5 kinds: random, systematic, convenience, stratified, or cluster. You won't have to memorize those 5 words in your homework or tests. They'll always be listed out, but you do have to know which one means which thing. So let's read about number 1. On the day of the last presidential election, ABC News organized an exit poll in which specific polling stations were randomly selected and all voters were surveyed as they left the premises. A couple of things about this one, especially if you've never voted before. In early voting, you can go to anywhere in your county, but if you go on the day of the election, you have to go to the polling station in your neighborhood. Only the people that are going to be living near you are going to vote in that same place. That spreads out all the voters amongst the county and the city so that hopefully they're not overrun. But that means we're talking about geography here. Notice that anytime it's talking about a specific location, a place, that's going to be important. And then notice that when they go to this town, they don't go to every polling station. They select some of them, and it does say randomly select, but they select some of the polling stations, and then they interview all the voters at that polling station. One of the phrases here can be that they did all the voters of some of the precincts. So that's why I'm writing all of some. And those 2 pieces are the clues that this is a cluster. I'm hoping you said it before I said it so that you can think about what these are. Cluster is always a group, but specifically based on geography, or if they happen to tell you that they're sampling all of some of the groups. So those are your 2 keywords for that. In number 2, we see in a Pew Research poll, 1,007 adults were called after their telephone numbers were randomly generated by a computer. Now notice again, it says the word randomly, but number 1 said randomly, and it wasn't a random sample. They were choosing which groups. However, in this case, you're randomly selecting individual names from a computer. Whenever a computer is involved, or drawing names out of a hat, or something like that, it is in fact a random sampling. So don't overthink that one. Number 3 says the CBS News station in New York City often obtains opinions by interviewing neighbors of a person who is the focus of a news story. Now, neighbors is not lots of different groups. It's one group of people that live next to this neighbor, and it seems like that's kind of an easy way to find people who know this person. They didn't take the time to find their workplace or their hobbies or their church or whatever. So if they're looking for the easy way out, that's another way of convenience. Like the convenience stores are an easy way to get your morning coffee or donut or whatever. Number 4 says a market researcher has partitioned all California residents into categories of unemployed, employed full-time, and employed part-time. She is surveying 50 people from each category. So again, it's important to look at the words here. Partitioned may not be a word that you're familiar with, but if you think about a partition in the room, it's grouping it off into different sections. So partition just means we're making groups. She's got groups based on a category. Now, what is this category made from? Not where they live, but some kind of characteristic. That's your clue here. The groups are not based on where they are, but who they are. In fact, what they have in common is that they're unemployed or employed full-time or employed part-time. And also notice that she is taking 50 people, so we're assuming that some from each category. So a little phrase you can use on this one is that it's sum of all. Remember, number 1 with the cluster was all of some of the groups, but this is sum of all of the groups. And because they have characteristics in common, this is stratified. People often get stratified and cluster confused. So if you're grouping your objects into groups, look at if those groups have some where in common, like number 1, geography, location, that's a cluster. Or if they have something in common, some kind of characteristic, that's going to be your stratified. And then the easiest one, number 5, in order to test customer satisfaction, a local car dealership surveys every 10th customer. This is your clue. It's got a number. If it's every 3rd, every 5th, every 10th, every 100th, then you have a system to choose. Systematic sampling.